Hi, Serge. Here we are with our next installment of the What Now unit as we study the in-between steps of this COVID-19 lockdown. To start, before we go anywhere else, I just want to tell you how incredible it was to see a lot of your faces last week at the parking lot party. I know it wasn't the same as us all being together in Wesley Hall and doing our normal programming, which I much would have preferred. I know you would have as well, but it did make my heart happy to at least safely share some space with you all. So thank you for all who came out. But let's just move on and continue to answer this question, what now? Last week we talked about the value in being present, if you remember. We discussed some things that were said in this book, Becoming Better Grown-Ups. Again, I highly recommend, whether you're a grown-up or not. We talked about being present and using that as your springboard to make it through each day. If you remember, we heard a special message from Brenna, who reminded you all that she's always there for you. And I just want to echo that promise as well. In the right here and the right now, we're here for you, no matter what. But step 2 in the process of making it through these days is remembering a very important fact about us as a community of faith. And that is that we are connected. That because of who we are together, we are living out this story and this time as one body. And despite the way it may feel in the current climate, nothing you do or say can make us stop being a family or stop being in this together. It's easy to self-isolate when the world looks the way that it does right now. We can get overwhelmed and feel weak and start to put up walls that keep other people out. So often, it's too easy for us to sink into this I can do it on my own mentality. I'm guilty of that as well. But that's ultimately not healthy, and it's not going to help us in the long run. But the important reminder tonight is that we are called to stay connected. We're called to stay connected to God, of course, not turning our back on his constant promises in a time like this. We are called to stay connected to one another, choosing not to do it all on our own, but to let others in with humility and grace. But also we're connected to stay to our sense of ourself. Something that is easy to lose sight of when it feels like the world around us is such a mess. So I'll ask you, has something in your life ever gone so wrong or gotten so bad that you have this feeling like you don't know who you are anymore? It could have been a breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or the loss of someone you love in your life. Maybe you made a huge transition, which you were really struggling with, something that happens to a lot of people, like changing schools or moving to a new town. Maybe it was something you had absolutely no control over, like your parents getting divorced or your siblings moving out of the house. I've been there before too. Times in my life when nothing felt the same as it was before, and it left me feeling like I didn't know this version of myself, like I had to meet her all over again. But please hear this. When times like that happen, and in the midst of a national pandemic, when the media is telling you incessantly that no matter what, nothing will ever be the same again, you are still the same person you've always been. And that person, whoever it is loved and is good and is capable of doing hard and undesirable things while still being held in God's arms. I know, Serge, that I feel most alive and most like myself when I talk to all of you. And if you were feeling distanced from the person you were when school was in session and when we could all go outside without wearing PPE, then lean into this family and remember who you were. And as you do, you'll find that you are fulfilling God's call to also stay connected to each other. Because, Serge, we belong to each other. And as a community of Christians in God's holy church, we are a family. I'll remind you of Paul's call to the church in Rome, found in Romans chapter 12, verse 5. It says, "So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others." Remember that. When you feel isolated or far away from the person you were and the people you love, we share this one body in faith. We're all in this together. So, when I was in college, I used to work full-time at our conference summer camps. So to set the scene, I worked at Little Grassy, which was about 2.5 hours away from Edwardsville where I lived. And the job would start not long after I took my last final at SIUE in mid-May and go until somewhere around August 1st. So Peep the picture of baby camp counselor Kelsey here. Okay, so now that that's over with, this is what I can share about that job. It was incredible. Absolutely. I would describe those times and those summers as some of the best times of my life. I was living out my dream, waking up in God's creation every morning, serving in ministry, and doing what I love. Those times were very sacred to me. But inevitably, they didn't last all year long. At some point, I had to go home. Campers stopped coming because they were going back to school, and life returned to the way it was before summer began. And every year that I made the transition back to school year Kelsey from camp counselor Kelsey, I would experience this disconnect. Like, I wasn't who I was before the summer started. And I hadn't seen my friends in almost 9 weeks, and God felt different to me than he did when I was at Little Grassy. Like somehow it was harder to find him when I wasn't waking up and going to sleep in worship and in the midst of this special and sacred place every night. Every time I did the transition, it got harder and harder. I felt misunderstood, and I would grieve that the summer was over. And I felt far away from the person I got to be at camp, my people at camp, and even God and the incredible way I could feel him at camp. I became totally disconnected to everything every year. And while a national pandemic and stay-at-home order is nothing like a summer at Little Grassy filled with joy and ministry, it's much different, and I get that. But while we ask this question, what now? I think we can make a comparison here. In this in-between period, you may feel disconnected. I even believe that when life finally, whenever that may be, goes back to the way we once considered normal, you'll also feel a little bit disconnected too. Like you just aren't sure how to live out this version of life anymore, or how to be this person anymore. So tonight, I invite you to hear these promises. That no matter what you are going through right now, you are still the beloved child of Christ that you have always been. You are still you, even when nothing else in the world makes sense. You're called to rise, you're called to love, and you're called to live as who God made you to be. Nothing changes how God sees you, not even in a world that doesn't seem to make any sense. God created you. And when he did, he saw that you were good. And you still are. And likewise, you're not alone. We are still connected, Surge. Still a part of this family together. Breathe deep and begin to search your heart to find ways to stay connected to your people. Call them. Reach out to them. Join in our fellowship each week. Know that even though everything may feel disrupted in this time, you aren't alone. We're standing with you and fighting alongside you, here for you in the right here and the right now. And last, that God is still God in the midst of this chaos and uncertainty. We still serve a God that is greater than this, that is fighting for us, and that knows exactly who we are every step of the way. If you feel disconnected during this time, please reach out. Don't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders alone. Share the burden. We love you, Surge, and we're going to get through this together. So now, in an effort to stay more connected, Youth Cabinet would like to invite you to a new way of doing so. So, see this message.
Hi, Surge. Hi, church. Youth Cabinet would like to invite you, whenever you are out getting your groceries or running errands around town, to come and use a piece of chalk to write down your prayer request somewhere underneath the overhang here at Wesley West. We're doing this in order to stay more connected to God and to our church and to each other in these trying times. Please know that if you write anything down here, that there will be someone from Youth Cabinet that will be praying over that prayer request at some point during the day.
Oh, Surge, you are so loved. Please utilize this new way of staying connected. Head over to Wesley West when you're out with your mom buying groceries. Write down your prayer requests using the sidewalk chalk provided, and know that at a certain time each day, a member of Youth Cabinet will be praying over those prayer requests. You are still held in God's beloved arms, even in this crazy time. We still love you. We're still in this together. All right, see you next week.